Welcome to the Sonic Days podcast, home of all things audio. This season was recorded live at Sonic Days 2024. Getting started in game audio isn't always easy, but that's what today's episode is here to help with. In this talk, lead trainer on audio kinetics training programs, Mads Maretty Sønderup, shares practical advice for navigating the early challenges of working in game audio. Whether you're just starting out or looking to refine your workflow, Mads offers insights on how to tackle common production hurdles and build more efficient creative processes.
Okay, let's begin. My name is Mads Maretty Sønderup, and I work at Audiokinetic alongside my colleague here, Xenia. And I'm a specialist in training education content. Right now I'm lead on Wwise training content things, so I decide what kind of trainings we offer, those kind of things. So I thought when Lars, the arranger of this conference, he said that what kind of things would you be presenting? I wasn't quite sure, but then maybe some beginner tips and tricks for Wwise. And then I realized while doing this, what is actually a beginner? That's pretty much a wide range of people, right? Is it the people that have never been exposed to Wwise? Or is it the people who have used Wwise for a couple of years and still finds them they're not necessarily professionals yet? So I decided that I'll do a slow step up, right? What's Wwise? Just to set the foundation. Tips and tricks where I take the most basic ones and I slowly scale up in difficulty. And I've taken these tips and tricks from the trainings I do normally. So it is things that professionals will also ask about, those kind of things. So it should be somewhat valid in whatever future product I might be making. Some further resources. If you have any questions, just ask me as we go ahead. I don't mind being interrupted. Just show up a hand and I'll try to catch you as we go along. So Wwise, let me ask the audience first. How many of you consider yourself to be a beginner of Wwise? Right? Cool. And how many consider yourself to be an expert? Fantastic. I wonder if there's anyone who's ever going to say yes to that, because we have a saying at Audiokinetic that nobody knows everything about Wwise. There's so many tangents you can go in various directions, right? And you can't cover everything. So you need to specialize somewhat. There's of course some basics, but you need to focus a bit. Right, so a bit of a summary on Wwise here. For those who don't know it, Wwise is 2 out of 3 game audio jobs favor Wwise experience. So that's quite a lot for many of the students that might be here. And we ship over 1,000 titles every year. But in general, right, Wwise is definitely a prominent player in game audio. If you want to work in this field, you got to know something about Wwise. It's true that we adapt most often to AAA productions, but that doesn't mean you can't use it for smaller productions as well. You just benefit from many of the workflows that might be from AAA as well. Just to emphasize a bit about how Wwise works, right? So we've looked at some other software, like take Metasounds, for example. They are really good at doing something specific, for example, offering some really nice tools for something specific, whereas Wwise is, sure, we're good at specifics too, but we often try to think about the holistic workflow of doing game audio, right? So you author some stuff, you simulate it in your own engine, you integrate it into your game, you mix it, you profile it to make sure that it works properly, those kind of things, and following that loop ahead. So we don't try to focus in one direction, we try to look at the holistic thing. How can you use this in a AAA production for hundreds of people, those kind of things, while still, of course, offering some of the most advanced tools and processes like 3D audio, spatial audio, and so on. I'll go through some of them later. Just want to quickly show this one. So one of my colleagues made this nice slide of like a sound designer's journey, and often you have like when you do some workflow with this game audio, right? You start with some sound library, or you produce some sounds, right? You go into your digital audio workstation, do some editing there. Maybe you use Strata, which is also a product we have. But then you get into the middleware part where you need to edit these and make them interactive behaviors and so on. And you port them to the game using, for example, sound banks. right? So this is very much of a segmented part as you go ahead. But recently, especially with Wwise 24.1, we've now much more thoroughly support something like live edit. How many of you know what live edit is? A couple, yes, cool. So past, you've been able to edit properties and they reflect right away in the game, right? But now you can also take sounds and you can put them into your project and instantly get into your game and you can hear the difference without restarting the game. That kind of flow, right? So these two parts should be more kind of one cycle where you work here, right? Because you're connected to the experience all the time. Yeah, okay, so just a run through of some of the most potent features of Wwise, right? And here I try to, even though profiling is a later thing, like figuring out where problems are, what kind of performance there is, this is probably one of the best selling points for Wwise and why people choose us, because they can go so far into seeing how their audio is performing, why it is performing this way and such. And yeah, that's a ton of stuff looking in the CPU, memory, whatever. So most likely you won't go to that length for many of you necessarily of using CPU and memory manager, those kind of things, but you can go there if you want to. So that's nice confirmation to have. And yeah, we have a ton of different mastering, metering, mixing techniques. We have some cool mastering suites. We also support HDR audio. It's been in here for years, but it's definitely something that is very popular these days. Side chaining and so on. So yeah, spatial audio acoustics, which I have a talk on as well tomorrow, if you want to learn more about that. It's also something you can setting up geometry in your game, so sounds reflect on geometry and it create that, I know people hate that word, create a higher sense of immersion, right? But that's the thing, right? 3D audio to help you with binauralizing sound, or especially in the height itself, right? Sounds do sound different when they are above or below, so why not try to emphasize that as well? Or at least give the option to players to opt in for this if they want to. Sounds, when you put them into Wwise, you can in Wwise change whatever they're going to be in your game. So you don't need to think so much about preparing your stuff well enough. You can just drop it into Wwise and edit it there and follow some guidelines and they will get in the proper format, so on in Wwise. And since we are a sound engine very much focused also on AAA games, large productions, right? We do have a lot of efforts in our software that makes it possible to use, for example, these work units where you can easily work in teams on the same things. For those of you who are trying to make like your beginner games and haven't started yet on a Git repository as such, you know how troubling it can be sometimes to merge stuff or those kind of problems. So that's, of course, very nicely supported. And yeah, it's a separate audio engine, right? So you can stay here, work here. You don't need to learn how to use Unreal or Unity. You can stay within your own audio environment. Right, so as summary, there's a ton of features. Most likely you won't get to use all of them, but there are, of course, some basics that are good to learn first. Just a quick call out to some of the samples we have. I have loaded up one of them. This one, which was my internship at Audiokinetic, I think 8 years ago now. Just the Wwise adventure game, which you can download. It's open source, so download it, modify it, whatever you want. See how we set it up. Wwise Audio Lab. It's also the Unreal sample we have, and there's Cube. It's still there, even though we might change it in some near future, but nevertheless it's there, so you can try it out with the Wwise courses. And yeah, Limbo as well. Limbo is quite an old game, but it's actually one of the more popular student samples. Despite that, just explains a bit like how valid this kind of experience is. Even is it 12 years ago or so they came out with that game. So it's yeah, fantastic to have that as well. We do have some online courses, and some of you might think, oh, does it cost money or anything? No, it doesn't. All the content itself doesn't cost anything. It's free. But if you want to get an exam afterwards on a certificate on, yes, this is a proof that I actually passed all these things, then you need to pay for that. But all the content here can be like exploited for free. So you don't really need to pay anything to learn Wwise. And yeah, we update these every second version of Wwise. Right. Okay. So now we got to the tips and tricks. I'm gonna start with I collected a bunch of, I don't know how many there is, but a bunch of them and see how far we get. I'll start with the most beginner things and then gradually scale up to something more advanced. And I'll try to do some stuff in Wwise as well, so you can see how working in there would be. And this one, of course, I have to say, dedicate time to learn the fundamentals. Quite often I experience students jumping into Wwise without necessarily knowing much about Wwise, trying to navigate in there. But Wwise is a very complex engine. Like, we're not gonna lie and say that it's, everybody can use Wwise, because you can't necessarily. You need some instructions and you need to learn what it is, and you can't just go from a digital audio workstation into Wwise because it looks different, because it is different. It's not a digital audio workstation. It's a interactive audio workstation, I guess, right? So the way things works naturally is different. So while it's powerful, probably one of the most powerful engines out there for game audio, it's also complex. Are you not directly working in Wwise? Maybe you are just working with someone who are using Wwise, or maybe you are only interested in music. Learn the fundamentals anyway. There is so many things that overlap in their experience. All right, so how to learn the basics? First of all, I'm going to say that we have the best community in any branch, I think, business, because we have so many good channels where people are super helpful to help you out. I see often also on social medias that mentors say out like, hey, for any students, I want some guidance on things. Let me know and I'll help you out, right? So people are super helpful. If you don't find anyone or don't want to just go on your own for some course stuff, take the free course on our website. I also have some further resources later, but even better maybe, ask a friend or some mentor to take you through a few things. And just be bold. Try to say to them, hey, is it okay if I join your office for a couple of days and sit next to you and ask a few questions here and there? Try it out. It can't hurt asking anyway, right? And it would just be nice both for you and, of course, asking the questions, but also following a certain workflow of someone who does this, right? So that's invaluable. Number 2, I'm not going to keep count, but... So learn the hierarchies and containers. This is, of course, something you learn in the courses, online courses here. But you can see here, this is Wwise. It looks a bit complex. Maybe we should just hide a few things here. All right, so this part over here is your entire project in Wwise, right? We have interactive music hierarchy, actor mixer hierarchy, master mixer hierarchy, and audio devices. It's quite important to know the difference, of course. But it's not necessarily that complicated if you try to simplify it. Interactive music and actor mixer. This should, in reality, actually just be one thing, because this is where you'd create your sounds. And so if I have music, do I need to put it here? No, not necessarily. It's just where the music features are that if you want to leverage those. You can have some music in here as well for the SFX stuff and such. So don't get constrained by these two things here, and I can almost promise you in the future we're going to blend these two things at some point into something that adapts automatically to whatever you're doing. Master mixer hierarchy, mixing part of it, right? You will create certain categories, and all your sounds from the 2 bottom ones here, these 2 bottom areas here will flow upwards into this bus hierarchy. And where does it flow then? Upwards into audio devices, right? So here would your sounds be. Here's your bus, your routing, your toggles to mix your game. And here's your audio devices, which could be headphones, sound bars, whatever you configure to, right? So think about this. The path of your stuff like this is not really that much complicated in regards to this. And then from there, it's just a lot of hierarchy stuff here. And of course, there's some good things to go through with the different components you can use, but that's the essence of it. Tip number 3, Wwise version matters. Of course, you probably know this from many other software as well, right? It can be fairly important to open up your project in the same version as what it is, right? But especially with Wwise, this can also be important because what companies will do is they will settle on a certain version, and that's what they will stick with until some lead decides to migrate to a newer version or something like that. But that takes out a couple of weeks to actually move to another version. To say it bluntly, you can easily fuck things up if you open up in a different version than you need to. Especially also for the courses that we deliver. Yeah, it would be nice that we had courses in any version of Wwise, but we don't have the effort to update for every version. So look what the version of Wwise is. Here you can see 24.1 is the one I have open right now. And it will look like this: year 24, major 1, or minor is the number afterwards. Here you can see 0. And then if you're doing a student project, try not to use 0, 1, or 2, because any ideas why you shouldn't use the minor version .0, 1, or 2? It's because, yeah, go ahead.
Beta version?
We do also have beta versions, but it's actually in the same lines of that. It's the earlier versions of a software, any software, right? Just like Windows, you don't want to upgrade it right away, right? When they ask you to. You got to wait a half a year and then you upgrade, right? Because there will be various bugs, those kind of things that might be something that you will encounter. So we always recommend using at least .3 or above for real productions. And I want to use the newest features in Wwise, and I want to go to 24, and it's only .0 now. Yeah, but like for most beginners, intermediate stuff, it's going to be the same. What we changed in 24 this time, for example, is a lot of the UI, those kind of things. And there was, for example, some better support of 3D audio or better spatial audio things. But I would say rather have a higher minor version, like a .7 or something like that, instead of trying to reach for the newest fancy features. It's going to be much more problematic to your student projects or beginner projects or whatever, that you have these kind of bugs or something that you need to wait for a new version to come out to fix this, right? Of course, I had to add a Spider-Man reference. With great power comes a lot of complexity. And that's maybe also a lot of my work, is to try to make Wwise even simpler for the beginner or the new learner of Wwise, but it is naturally complicated, right? And it's hard. I can't just remove stuff because people are actually using it, right? So we need to think about how to simplify it. And we try every year to think about, okay, so how can we simplify it? This year I will show a few things that you can do to simplify your own workflow, but you probably, as a beginners, want to simplify it a bit for yourself in the beginning. So creating a simple layout here, I'll just try to do something like that in the beginning. Here's this layout designer. This is the view you'll start out with. I maximized it here. So picking some kind of sound here. Let's take a synth bass here, probably. How many of you have used Wwise before 24.1? Right? So you'll probably notice there's quite a few changes, right? It looks different. All the properties, not specifically these ones, but most of them are put over here in the side now. And that's, like if you compare it to something like Unreal or something like that, that will be the same thing. You have your properties sideways so you can focus on the center here of what you're doing, which is the waveform we want to have focus on, right? So we're trying to slowly adapt for data workflow there, but nevertheless, you can see now I have a view here, I have one here. There's a help down here. Like maybe you will find it useful, but I like to delete this one. The meter over here is like in the entire length of the screen. No thanks. I want to put it over here, right? And you can easily manage this and adapt it to what you need. Also this part in here, you can see now that in this new workflow there are a few buttons up here. Maximize or pop out. This one is nice for if you just want to trim a waveform, try to simplify it like this. But also this view over here, if I click on all properties, oh my freaking god, a lot of properties, right? I don't need all of this at all. In fact, when I do editing, I need much less. So what can I do here? Well, there's actually something called favorites now. And you can say, if I want to look at this one, I can add this one to favorites. I can add maybe volume here to favorites. And then this small star here will only show the properties that you most likely use, right? There's so much stuff in here that you don't want to be exposed to at all times. So try to figure out what are you using and then make it simple for yourself. last tip on this thing here, keep in mind if you have some sounds here and you want to inspect all of them, you can always take all these sounds, drag them in here, and you can see all of them now, and I can go one by one here through, checking that they are okay, and I can right-click on them to, now this one will keep open, this one, keep open if you want to make sure it's open all the time, right? So, bit of a UI tips there. Go ahead.
Are you able to save what's it called?
The layout?
Preset, the template.
For layouts?
For layout.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. There is now I can't remember the shortcut, but these, for example, you can make your own user layouts here. These ones you can also go into, I think it's in app data for Wwise, or you can make Wwise, and these things will be saved in here. I'll figure out afterwards. I have it in my storage. But yes, you can definitely. And that's a really good point. There's actually a tip later on also to create your own layouts, presets, those kind of things, so that when you go to a new production or something else, you can bring those things along and quickly get started. People do that all the time. I've heard this from many of the best composers. They have a copy of these. I can show it now. If you go down here, open, containing these work units here, these ones are what saves all the information for this sound here and what it is its settings in Wwise and such. And you just copy paste these small work units into your new project. It will open up in the new project like with that structure. The sound might not be following as well, but the structure is there and the settings are correct as you had previously. So people will do this and have like, for example, music that they can just put in and then whoop, you have your own entire music structure and they can insert the sounds afterwards, for sure. Right, yeah, a bit about resetting as well here. So first off, if you mess up your view here, let's try to actually mess it up. Fear not, you can always go to layouts, reset factory layouts, and decide what layout you want to reset. Yes, I want to proceed. And we have it back, right? So that's one way to fix it again. If there's some kind of reset of UI, like meter assignment, you can see the meter here has a bus, for example, here. If I had assigned another bus to it, like this, and I can't really figure out why I'm not hearing what I'm supposed to and such, you can also reset those kind of settings here, because they will not get reset by layouts. And that is in the Wwise project folder. We can take a look here and see if that's the same for, here you can see app data, in here Wwise. There's a bunch of settings in here saved as well. So you can reset your stuff if you mess things up, and they're not gonna ruin your project per se. That's just gonna be user preferences. And lastly, if I need to reset, that was actually this one I was explaining in a second here. But this, if you need to reset also your last things, like in Profiler you have some performance monitor curves. There's also next to, in your Wwise projects, there are this, let's find it in here, Wwise project. You can see here, there's your Wwise project here. This one you should not delete. That will delete your project. But there is this Wwise venture game.maretty. This is both something you don't want to send to your colleagues, those kind of things, if you share your project. I can just delete this one and it will reset all the settings as if I was a new entry to Wwise. While we're here, you can also see all the previous profilings I did on my game is also stored here as a safe keeping. So yeah, that's a way to reset. Did it make sense? Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a way to regularly save backups?
Backups of Wwise?
Wwise projects, so that you don't reset something that you did for 2 days ago. But where does it?
We don't do gradual savings of that, unfortunately, not yet. My best recommendation would be to use a repository of some kind, version history, and then try to do the same thing for Wwise Venture Game. When we edit this stuff, when you do some change, go into your Git repository, add that small change, and delete the rest. Go into your game and test it out, see if that small change you did actually fixed it. And if it does, go back into Git and then commit it to your following project, right? Because if you add all the stuff that you changed in, there's going to be a lot of temporary files, those kind of things that is not meant to be sent. So yeah, that's my best recommendation. Use a version control. Was there another question somewhere? Yeah?
I was just wondering if you could reset the layout with a hotkey.
Good question. Let's see here if shortcuts reset. No, I don't think so. Maybe you can do it with... Wwise also supports doing some programming to next to called Wwise, where you can call various commands behind the scenes of Wwise. And maybe there's a command for it there, but not in a shortcut, it looks like. Yeah, so how many of you are doing music? All right, cool, perfect. Let's look in our music here. Maybe you can see here also that when I move to music, like this one, it automatically adapts in this middle view here to what I'm looking at. So now I'm in a playlist. If I open this up here, they think the dungeon, that's more interesting. And now I have some music pieces here, right, where you can edit various stuff. I could zoom in here to go further, right, into my project. But these buttons here are very convenient, right? You want to find some cool mapping for inspecting this. So your cursor, holding that on the music tracks here, scrolling, is the actual tracks. Hold it on the tracks here, and you'll scroll up and down. And you can inverse this by holding down Shift. So if I'm here and scrolling, it's the opposite direction, right? So there's a bit of tips there. And there's also Control for zooming. And you can see here, holding your mouse here for zooming as well. And there's, of course, these small reset buttons here that maps everything to the view you have, right? But try to practice these shortcuts when using Wwise, so you get that. Otherwise, you'll end up like me. I always go here to zoom out things because I'm used to that, right? But it's definitely a good idea to practice these things, these shortcuts, right away. Even more shortcuts. Let's try one that is an interesting one. Say that we take this blacksmith here, right? And I'll add some effect to make it different, right? So, any suggestions on an effect we should add?
Reverb.
Reverb, cool. I actually don't know if this example works with reverb. I'm just gonna take the guitar distortion so it's more noticeable. Sorry for it was a fake question there. Okay, let's see here.
Here you are, adventurer. One hardy pickaxe that has served me well when mining ore.
Okay.
Here you are, adventurer.
Right, you can hear it's definitely distorted. What would it sound like before I added these effects? Well, there is a nice way to compare sounds by play, holding down Shift as well. Then you bypass properties and effects.
Here you are, adventurer. Here you are. Here you are. Here you are.
So when you work in Wwise, it's also if you just do like a pitch shifting, you can take an effect off here again. Sound here, we go to my incredibly long list here, pitch shifting.
Here you are, adventurer. Here you are.
Did I actually change? How subtle was my change here? Well, then in that case,
Here you are. Here you are. Here you are. Here you are. Here you
it's much easier to test these things out or A/B test things if you can have a shortcut for that. Right? Yeah, and there's a bunch of other shortcuts, but there's also this shortcut manager that I showed you in a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible to automate some kind of parameter throughout this sound bit, for example, like raising the pitch, lowering the pitch over time?
Yeah, in linearly perspective, yeah, there is. It is not always ideal to do this. Sometimes I see people going into the music hierarchy and doing simple sounds because there you have the nice curves you can add directly onto the waveform. I can show it here, but for example in music layouts here, if I take here a track, you will notice that there are these curves here, mentioned up here, volume for example, where I can take this one and make some progression of volume change here. But for sounds like these ones, you want to add a RTPC here. All right, well, you can definitely in the RTPCs here, you can add, no, I'll just take something else here, makeup gain, for example. And you can add a time-based RTPC. And that means that over time, some change will happen here, right? So just map that to something like voice volume or something like that, yeah. What's another question?
Yeah,
to ask you about that shortcut of bypass.
Yeah.
Why does it not work with the reverb? It's because of Basil.
Well, let's try it if it works with reverb. I just feared it wouldn't. Let's try here again.
Here you are.
No, it works fine. Yeah. These things here, like layouts, is something that I know a lot of Wwise folks promote a lot, to switch layouts based on these F buttons, but like these new laptops often have different ways to access your F buttons, so I don't necessarily like to promote too much that workflow. I just use the menu these days. All right. So another thing, when you are doing some sound design and you are working in Reaper, I guess, something like a DAW, and you're iterating on some product, right? Say that we have this blacksmith here, and we are not with that reverb. We're iterating on how that should sound, and in your project you are chopping things up. Maybe you are applying some kind of effect on it, and you want to send it to Wwise again now because you've run it there. The workflow of taking a sound and adding it to Wwise again. Maybe I can take some sound just to demonstrate here. I think I have a bunch of sounds on my desktop. Here we go. So take some kind of sound here, create, destroy, just putting in here, right? You get this importer thing, and then you import, and if it's already there, let's try to import it again, because now I did a new revision here. Oh. Import it, and it asks again, oh, do I want to replace? Yes, of course I want to replace. I'm iterating, right? In that case, try to think if you can save your edited sound directly on the original sound. Because when you import stuff into Wwise, this one here, where does it go? It goes into the Wwise project originals folder. So all of the sounds you import will be copied into the Wwise project and stay there. And in here you'll see, now I have a bash create destroy 01, and if you save your Reaper edits directly onto this file and tap back into Wwise, it will just auto update. So you can pretty much stay just between Reaper and Wwise all the time and just tap between them. That's much better workflow instead of having to use the importer to add import and go all that route. Yeah, go ahead.
You can export links directly into Wwise.
You can definitely override the original sounds that you imported. Yeah, that would be a nice workflow. There's also a plugin for Reaper called Wwise that allows you to have some additional things, additional properties that's then loaded into Wwise. It creates some containers automatically and such. So you can also use that plugin, but no matter what digital audio workstation you're using, I think the good point is just to try to save your on top of these files that is in the original folder. So you don't have to, so it's a nice iteration workflow, right? How many are actually doing this? How many of you are already doing this? Yeah? 1, 2, cool, 3. We're stepping a bit up in difficulty, you might notice. And I'm not mentioning the basic things that you will see online anyway. I want to give you something that is audition the converted sound. Do you know what this is? The converted sound? Yeah? I see some nodding. So back in Wwise here, we have a sound.
Luck alone saved me. I may make implements of battle, but...
So, no, let's take this one actually. This one we just imported, right? This sound here is just imported into Wwise, and it's there in the originals folder, and whenever you press play, it's played from the originals folder into Wwise, and it's played right away, right? So you don't need to do any things to make it audible. For it to be ready for the game itself, it needs to be converted into a more game-friendly format. You can see now it's blue here. The other ones are white. That means these ones have been converted. This one has not. You can also notice this when I go down to my play transport control here. It says play original now. But if I set to play converted, I'm allowed to play it anyway. Well, that's not supposed to, I guess. Maybe it converted automatically. Yeah, it looks like it did. I guess a new feature. So either go down here and convert it manually, or otherwise we are apparently doing that automatically now. But set it to converted, and I would actually encourage you to always have it to set to converted. Because what is that sound? Well, it's how you're going to hear it in-game. So after all the changes you've done in Wwise, how it's going to be sounding in there. So it's not going to be like, sure, it's going to be try to simulate how, like with you have original here and you change settings, of course there's going to be some simulation of how it would sound, but this one is the most accurate to how it would sound in game, thereby the most reassuring of when you go into the game, this is how it sounds. For example, I can change these conversion settings, I guess. Conversion settings, it has some settings here. You can see this is how it transfers everything in. And just for fun, I'll take this one and make it into a super bad quality convert. So you can definitely hear the difference, right? But if I play the original, so that's not going to be very accurate to what you're going to hear in the game, right? You want to hear the actual changed version of it. So try to keep this on. Naturally, you can't do that all the time. Sometimes you need to play around with the original all the time instead of converting all the time, but it's definitely a safer way to audition it. Right, so how are we on time? 15 minutes left, right? Yes, this is not only a good recommendation, but also, I think, a really good sales point for Wwise, and that is that we're not trying to make a software that can only edit sounds per se. We're trying to make an audio environment where you work in, and that's where you are. You don't need to go into the game to change things. You can just work in your own audio-friendly environment. Programming, no, please keep that in the game side, right? And with something called events, how many of you know what events are? Great, cool. So, yes, the events is a nice way to structure what happens in your project, right? So you want to play a certain ambience here. I want to play another sound maybe. I want to also set switch at the same time, those kind of things. And when I call this event, it does all of these actions here. And that's actually a super good way of retaining control in your audio environment at where you are, Wwise. A lot of folks are doing, and I've done that in past, for example, set state, done these things from the game. But what does it mean? Well, it means that when you need to change that set state to another thing, you need to go into the game and change the code for setting that state, right? If you just had an event that said set state to desert, right? Something like that. Well, you can just change it in Wwise because you can just go into the event and change the set state, right? It's right here. So, states, set a state, and all I do now is change this one to music regions, desert. Oh, okay, it's no longer desert. No matter, I don't need to boot up Unreal, take a million years to initialize shaders. I can just change it here, right? So that's a nice way to focus on Wwise being there all the time. Yeah, Daniel?
In the events at the play events, then there's a probability data, right?
Yeah.
In most cases in Wwise, then you can hook everything up to an RTPC, but can you hook this up to an RTPC?
That's a good question. Let's see here. That there's this play here, probability, this thing here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't look like it has any RTPC mapping. So if I was you, I would probably set that up with some random container, something like that, and then control it from within there. Yeah. But yeah, this probability is also you can easily for yourself do something like this, and you play the sound, and where it doesn't play all the time, and then you're looking in the rest of the Wwise environment, why the heck is my sound not playing right? So that's sometimes a bit dangerous to use this one unless you're really good at profiling. So you can go in and see why it's not playing. Oh, it's probability thing, right? So yeah, try to make your randomization within here at first so you can see it there. But yeah, good question. Right. Yeah, not a ton of time left, but there is also RTPCs. Many of you might have set it up for time of day, for example, that when time of day in your game changes, it changes some of the ambience, something like that, or maybe the speed of the character, and that changes the footstep, emphasis, kind of things. But keep in mind, there's also these built-in modes here for game parameters. So you don't always need to go into the game and set a RTPC in order for it to change. You can also go in here, create a new RTPC, set it to distance, and then you have the distance between the sound and the listener. So you don't need to go into the game to set these things up. It is here. So try to stay within Wwise and see if you can do it there. Because, it's better to stay within that thought process, right? Yeah, this one I'm gonna skip for now. Yeah, maybe just this one then. So most often, this is a trick that I sometimes, and really large productions, they say that you cannot do this because they are so like specific on what performance is used for. But quite often when I have a sound like this one here, you can see that if I take the references here, I have one event that is playing this one. So when I call this blacksmith dialogue here, it plays this sound here, right? But what happens if I reiterate on this one? If I delete this SFX here, for example. I should have kept my event here. But nevertheless, what was it? It was the 2. Okay, cool. Let's go do this. 2. Here we go. Event. Right. Shit, it's missing. Now I need to reassign this into the event again. Well, there's actually a nice workflow iteration tip here. Try to, instead of having your sounds separate like these ones here, just make in front of them either a random container or blend container as parent to one of these. And then add this one to the event. Because when you then remove that SFX to put in a new one, the link won't be broken. It will just look at the next one and play that one instead. So that's a nice way to keep going without breaking too many connections. And then the end you can always go in and fix those, so remove the parents and such, because it does, of course, naturally in memory, it does take a tiny bit of more memory to know that something is within something else, right? So for the performance enthusiasts, they might not recommend doing this, but from a workflow stuff, and for all of you guys, just try to make your workflow iteration process better and quicker. Right. I want to make some time for questions as well, but live edit, I think you got the point about live edit, but definitely try to set this up with the game and see that you can actually still be in the game while importing new sounds. And this one, I'm definitely just gonna show for a second here. So you can see here in my music structure here, for example, I have some different layers. Let's see, ambient here. I have these categories, fairly commonly used categories, right? Desert, dungeon, those kind of things. What if I wanted this one in my new project as well, right? Notice that on top of it here, music, there's a small symbol. Does anyone know what that symbol means there? The U? Work unit, yes. So that means that at this point, all of these things here are saved within that work unit. Let's see how it looks like. You see music, this work unit here. I guess we can open up just to see how it looks. Here, right, all the properties, all the stuff this is just Wwise behind the scenes, right? This is saved in that single file there. So if you take that file and take it into another Wwise project, this code is barely going to change, right? So you can just open it up in another Wwise version and you'll have the exact same structure. But the sounds themselves, you'll need to add in again. But just getting a quick start on something sometimes is a good way to get started and get into a game, right? Something like that. And a ton of professionals do the same thing. They have their own work units they want to get started on. Besides that, there's also, for if you have some settings, say that this one, I wanted to save the settings that I've done here onto this sound here. There are some presets here. Save preset, dialogue, master, I will call it. Just so I know that this is meant to be for all dialogue, right? And I can go into the other one and paste. Here it is. And it will change the other object I have with its same settings. So that's a nice way to align whether something should be the same, right? Okay, quickly skimming through the rest here. Otherwise, there's a few tips here we'll get up later. But nevertheless, here's some resources I collected. Most importantly, I think is maybe this one. If you want to grab some resources, it's the same that is in this QR code. It's just a Google Doc where I collected all these things and much more for some further readings. But just keep in mind, if you're beginners of Wwise, don't try to learn everything at once. Take it as it comes. Go into your projects and see what you actually need in your project, and then follow that nature of development, right? And use this document if you want to look something up. Hey, I don't know what spatial audio is. Look up there, and then use it. Don't try to read everything at once. Right? So that's pretty much it. Thank you for going in here.